Shirley here with Sirius Taurus Moon. This is Venus, our Jupiter day, and Venus is in the sixth house with Mercury being in the fourth. Ascendant 11 degrees Capricorn, midheaven 29 degrees Libra, conjoining the Moon in zero Scorpio. Mars in the 14 Aries. Mercury is 2 meters from conjoining Chiron, conjoining already Aries. Venus is 2 meters from conjoining Aldebaran, and the moon is 2 meters from being a full moon. Now, when we talk about talismanic creation, um, when we address in our creation, and the world, then this we're basically creating something for the world, and then let's take it to a realm of politics. Think about one world government. It has to be representative of every single individual, that has to be safe and free in spirit and in matter and in ether. Like good morning for people that thought otherwise. Otherwise, it loses the mandate of the heaven, which means, what was I talking about in previous episodes? That Pluto will sextile Aries from where? No longer Leo, not just 2 cities bombed. And so when we think about any type of ritual or occultistic practice that has the world as its ontological unit, um, is kind of, how should I say that? Let's say if I created tomorrow, um, which I kind of did when I think about it, I created a talisman of Neptune Saturn conjunction in Aries. And not people like, not a smart move. Well, I did that to address the energy. Um, oh, or talismans of the other planets and so on. And so, um, this is interesting when I think about it, because these are things that, how should I say that? When the world is the ontological unit, why did I say 0 degree Aries? Because it's a world degree. And then I'm like, well, when the world is the ontological unit of our creation, um, it's one thing to do a movie about the world. It's another thing to do an occultistic issue related to the world. And this is where, if I have, let's say, um, let's say I have an astrological consultation business, and a client comes and I see that the synastry between me and that client are not so compatible. So I can address that issue, and usually when we address the incompatibility, those things show up, and usually people are like, well, they can see how that manifests, and I can see how, let's say, another astrologer might be more compatible, would be the more of the right astrologer for them. If I do a creation that affects that individual, I can't say, oh, they don't get to have a say in the way that that affects the world. It's kind of like a one world government thing. Now, I also want to extend that to the axis of Deneb, Algedi, Fomalhaut, and Magha, and Regulus. one of the things that I addressed upon my Pluto square was there were certain interactions that, how should I say that? If that's that person in that position, however challenge could be the synastry, to represent myself, I have to address that person in that position. And then when people, and now here's the thing, if we have a tribe or a mafia, or, and by the way, we say mafia is simply family business. If this family business is legal or not is changing according to how mafias operate in different segments of the time. You're all going to tell me, but Chile, this is not true. It is. Hmm. Hmm. What we would not have corporate laws if this was not true. It means that we needed to regulate the behavior of businesses. Now, when a mafia controls a neighborhood and anybody can move to another neighborhood, have affordable housing in that other neighborhood, people can say, well, that place, that city is kind of like belonging to that. Or when a community has a court system, one of the things I saw is the rising of attempts to do a Judaic Sharia version or Judaic version of Sharia jurisdiction. And then they say, yeah, a person can accept the jurisdiction or they can leave the community. Now, they have to have a place to leave the community. Decapitation of jurisdiction is not unprecedented, I think, even in the Bible. Talk about, it was the secular that abolished the Inquisition, if we take it to, let's say, Christianity. The guillotine versus the Inquisition. Okay, we can think about a humane method of decapitation that ended basically Inquisition. That's why they did that. Um, okay, the guillotine, and I'm not the only one saying that the guillotine is actually it is not for me comment that actually I was seeing stuff about the guillotine before the Pluto ingress to Aquarius, um, and the guillotine was simply invented as a more humane method of killing for mass decapitations. Now, um, operating from perspectives that not all people can be free and so on and so forth is the meat and butter of how they make of what is building guillotine and the use of them. Or the vegan meat and butter. Vegan meat and anyway, and ghee. I don't know. BBB got Mo. Now, this is exactly when we think about the Me Too. Why was the Me Too comment with Uranus Aries conjunction square in Pluto? My job should not include abuse. negating the occultistic rape that is so associated with those. And that's exactly the thing. When it's an isolated Eckveld place, is one thing. When that place wants to have a one world government, then each and every person that's supposed to be affected by that has to have not just a say, but has to have their sovereignty honored in spirit, matter, and ether. When we think about 1911 and the dissolution of the Standard Oil conglomerate, that of course wasn't a real dissolution because we were heading towards the Neptune sextile Pluto century. Um, Nothing that is not built on honoring feminine, masculine, sovereignty, sense of self, on all levels of existence has any merit. The only thing that has merit within it is the segments that would also be there in a world that honors feminine, masculine, and so on and so forth. What was Demeter doing? Jupiter was in Spica. Aries, Uranus were opposing Jupiter, squaring in T-square with Pluto. The justification was like, due procedure, due that, due to the nature of the offense, and it shook the foundations. And then people try to take it back to, it's kind of like working through the Great Depression, trying to take Aries back to Pisces, to tropical Pisces. Entering the bisextile of the Gladio, trying to do, actually, Michael Franzese, and basically ex-mafia boss, explained that because he identified that they were entering a different phase where the old way to do mafia would not be relevant anymore, and becoming an informant by then was keeping people out of jail. We do not have another bisextile. People think, oh, the Epstein list, they're all the MK Ultra, MK, often those are classified projects budgets. And we do not have another bisextile. We are in a bisextile right now, but counter to the bisextile of the that opened the Pluto sextile Neptune upon perfection. Of course, the 29 could already be considered the applying bisextile. That was something that had a trajectory for almost a century. That's not the bisextile of today. Um, and the closing sextile of Pluto and Aries at the end of Aries and beginning Taurus um, is absolutely something that can be worldwide extinction. You know, that's a form of denucleafication. There wouldn't be no bombs. And indeed, a civilization that doesn't honor feminine and masculine to begin with never existed. I think at this point I'm not even sounding weird when I say that. So, there is no unity without honoring the feminine. And a cult like is not honoring. And it also pertains to the esoteric traditions of creations that are, you know, if something was meant to create a servitude or a servant or a slave is not compatible. That, how should I say that? That type of esoterics will not prevent total human extinction. The truth is the truth. Like, what will people do? I don't know. But it doesn't change the truth. The people that suddenly turned on women thinking that they're going to have fraternité, um, and I'm not talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking in general. All of their problems with women would be resolved by honoring the feminine, honoring the masculine, in spirit, in matter, in politics, in law, and so on and so forth. Definitely in esoterics, trying to subjugate or control the feminine is the greatest form of self-undermining. I was finishing to record the previous episode and I was like, I felt the depletion trying to read Genesis, and I was like, that's the depletion. That's not something that is healthy to even read for the nervous system. It's not an energy where a woman can be a woman around, and thus a man cannot be a man, let alone people that are two gendered and so on and so forth. Trying to operate in the world post Me Too is trying to operate in a world post Uranus Aries conjunction square Pluto with the rules of the world before, and trying to generate something that would take that back to before the Aries Uranus conjunction is going human extinction. And trying to dictate for the world by subjugating of the feminine, doesn't matter if it's done by a man or a woman, is going human extinction. Now, these are also considerations for both one world government, one world religion, anything that wants to operate on a world scale. And also creation of, let's say, talismanic work that is on the world degree or affects the world. As long as we keep that in mind and we honor sovereignty in spirit, matter, and ether, then then that should not be a problem, because Those things affect the world. But it also brings forth that, um, for me, I just created a bottle of pepper essential oil, black pepper essential oil, and palmarosa essential oil. And then later, at a later date, I put a deneb algae next to it. This, as much as I remember, there was the election, and then I put some red paint. And I saw concentration camps, and I was like, yeah, that's the point to antidote that timeline. And then that bottle of oil that is empty, that I was putting some orange paint. Let me take a look at that. Not much of ritual. I just colored the things with Saturn Neptune in Aries, and Saturn Neptune in Aries. And what do I have here? Something to do with Pisces. Oh, Aries Pisces, because wait a second, let me read the entire equation. Sidereal Pisces. So I did it both for tropical Aries and sidereal Pisces. Get to Gate gebruikt. Tropical Aries, sidereal Pisces. Clear air, clear water, and energy. And a lot of happiness, because a lot of happiness was being pointed. So that's what I did. The election was when Neptune and Saturn conjoined in tropical Aries. I think it was the 0 degree tropical Aries, and which would be sidereal Pisces. Either the ascendant or midheaven was around Deneb Algedi. And this was conjoining red and orange paint, which was exactly the chakras that needed alignment during the Me Too. It's an empty bottle of oil, an open empty bottle of oil that I just painted on. Yeah, that's what it is. As per the oils, yeah, I named the oils. So there was Palmarosa and black pepper. Just because that, it's kind of like I had 2 oil bottles, and I was like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? Well, I'll try it. Nothing fancy and elaborate. But this is being fully transparent that was something that I did around the world degree, I believe. Was there any invocation? No, I was just painting at the election and setting the intention, and that's it. Um, and yeah, I think full transparency is very important. Um, and full of it. Think about it. If there's a government law, this is why governments have websites, and they have to be in all the languages, so that and people have to be literate. Now, it pertains to the occult as well.
if the world is the ontological unit and we have a ritual around it, then it should be fully transparent and fully disclosed. Saturn is applying to trine Lilith. And by the way, doing that will tend to a lot of issues that will cease the persecution of occultists. The model of, now here's the thing, is a different thing when I make, I don't know, a Venus talisman for my altar, and even an outer planet talisman. So I did capture the B6 style, and I think most of the videos where I was doing talismans are even online. They were like, it was that age of air disclosed. I was ahead of my time unintentionally. Now that I think about it, so it was really not intentional. It was kind of like, oh, the planet is, oh my god, we have a talisman. Absolutely not the way the ancients did that. But when we put, let's say, an outer planet talisman, or where we put the world or bisextile, then the ontological unit here extends to where it doesn't operate anymore by standards of, let's say, doing astrological talisman, and then, I don't know, for people that are doing it commercially, selling that talisman, or doing it for oneself. This is already something that requires transparency. Think about it. It's kind of like the government having new laws without anybody having a say in that law. Now, how should I say that? The way things get done between two corporations cannot be the way things get done. Let's say, if we want, think about the European Union willing to extend to Iceland. The way things get done to, how should I say that? Um, the way things get done to have a discussion between a diplomat in representing the EU or the alliance, and a diplomat representing the United States or the non-allied nations is not the way things get done, with Iceland needing to have a referendum before joining the EU. Okay? It's not a shake hands and switch fluids and boom, consecrate the Declaration of Independence of some sort. You know, it's okay. It is. It's just not how how it can get done on a way that actually extends to sovereignty. This is why a lot of the things falling apart with Saturn and Neptune are actually falling into place. Also think about the difference between, let's say, a business. There are places where If people think about running a business of, let's say, 4 or 5 employees or co-contractors, is a difference to having a traded company. If my 401k might somehow stumble into being invested in it, I should be able to see full transparency of everything. When I said plans for sovereignty with Aries, now here is the thing with sovereignty. If people are not aware of that, it would look very funny and very weird. If somebody, if somebody comes with an agenda to subjugate, and I had that to somebody that I was a friend to, and then they were succumbed to this subjugating agenda, and it just looked really weird. It's just kind of like that's very weird. That's not something that I can live with. Not even as a roommate. Actually, it was one of my responses. There was another channel of astrology and channeling where they addressed, oh, people don't want to have roommates anymore. They want to live in their own small apartments. Yeah, if there's subjugation agendas running between affecting people's housing. Even in cohabiting intentional communities, they have separate houses for a reason. You know what that reminds me? That reminds me, in Israel, there was a lot of this culture where people were paying a lot of money as tenants, and then their incentive for having an investment property was they were sick of being the person that gets screwed, and they wanted to screw somebody else over. That's not a business strategy. And those indeed are the people that took a loan with money that wasn't theirs, and in Rich Dad Poor Dad they forgot to mention the trust. Haphazardly or by design. And that's exactly, the people that succumb to taking a loan with money that's not theirs. Sometimes it was people that were just, entrepreneurial or believe in the bank or whatnot. But a lot of the people that their incentive to have an investment property was an investment property, not their own house, not a residence, was, oh, they were sick of being on the side that gets screwed over. That's not a business strategy. Investment property means caretaking for that house before one caretakes even for their own property. Because If I forgot to fix the roof in my property, I can sleep in a sleeping bag in a tent in my room. My tenant cannot. And if the working sector or market sector or economy is such, or if there is an MK often trying to dehouse tenants because they're seen by the feminine by some deep state called or whatnot, Epstein, then okay, it won't help me to check the tenants by the company that does also the harm to the tenants. What would help me to have a good conversation with the tenant before the house is flipped, before I wake up to a situation where the estate or the investment property is ruined? The same way the people that were venturing into whether it's one world government or cult practices because they were sick of being the people that are screwed over, so to speak, then again, hold accountable. Not the tenant that ran away and left all their things there because they were subjected to rape, but the classified projects budget that funded the training of the people that used even no touch techniques to rape. Now, um, now let's talk about the good things. Because the good things is that having the world as an ontological unit and yes, being transparent and so on and so forth opens a venue to a lot more sovereignty representation and the freedom that is honoring of self and other. And literacy in that case is also the literacy regarding the occult. This is where I really pay reverence to Gigi Young, that whose teachings had a lot of people becoming literate in basic concepts relating to the occult, and the discerning between, again, I might not agree with Christ's spirit versus, I definitely understand why would a person come to that terminology in the spirit of in the zeitgeist. But and also to the fact that we cannot talk about a hierarchy of occult or hierarchy of archangels, and this might be the reason why it was difficult for me to find an election for the purchase of Angelica oil, because the hierarchical archangel system might not be compatible with an individual sovereignty hierarchic. For example, I'm past my Saturn return, Pluto square, and soon to be Neptune square. But my Pluto return, Pluto square, Neptune square, Pluto return. Centaurian. Pluto return is Centaurian almost. Um, no, Pluto return is bad and Centaurian. Pluto, yeah. If somebody lives to their Pluto return, um, it means we have abolished occultistic rape. um, but but let's say my Pluto square is not the Pluto square of even the next degree Pluto next to me, let alone the Pluto Sagittarius. And of course, each chart has their own. My Pluto square from the 9th to the 12th, or from the 12th square in the 9th, is not a Pluto square from the 1st square in the 10th. Definitely, Saturn return issues it's kind of like, well, married people, how should I say, a woman that was divorced will have a lot of understanding about marriage that a woman that is married doesn't, and that a woman that has not married doesn't. In fact, listening to women that are married or were married is very important. And yet, marriage in, let's say, my parents' age, very different to marriage just a generation ago, and very different to today. There was a time where people could rely on a prenuptial to prenuptial. Uranus, Taurus, and Beta Persei was people trying to cash in on their prenuptial, finding out that it doesn't actually prenuptial in real time. There is an actual attempt to ban divorce. Okay, the way we, how should I say that? Um, the way we run, if my company has a product and that product is, let's say, I'm supposed to make a body butter, so butter, then there are that butter needs to be in a certain temperature. It needs to be fresh. It needs to go through certain processes. Um, that cannot extend to running a company um, which product is individual sovereignty, meaning a government. Now, people will say, "Oh, we gotta take a look at the GDP. We gotta take a look at it." Basis, the product is a sovereign citizen, safe and free. On an individual level, not butter. If I was to make, if I was to think about um, the product of an individual person, safe and free, versus, let's say, essential oil infused butter. I with essential oil diffused butter, I can say I can open the chart. Woo! There is an election. Boom. Where is my Shia? Where is my, oh, what oils do I have? I don't even have anything that connects to that planet. Well, there is this orange oil. Let's pull the orange oil and have a good intention and hope for good. And I can't just say, oh, there is an election. Let's have a human being. If it's a couple trying to conceive, it's like, well, they can try. Do they feel the moment? And so when we think about population management, control, or whatnot, those are those concepts are void and null. And by the way, HR also knows that I need an employee now, or I need to recruit someone now, is also void and null. Because I can, so it's kind of like the HR can recruit someone now, they might get that part done. What would be the quality of that recruitment? Now, if the vision of the company was, oh, I need to mold the person into the job, and they would be my they would be managing me. That's not a job. That's a crime against humanity, punishable by death. Now go and explain that to the person that was introduced to these methods by having that done to them. And again, when we talk about a cult or a sect, then we can have call to consciousness, the right to exit a cult of belief, or the right to exit violence. When we talk about the global issue, that can't operate. And if the incentive was world domination, then there's a technology for that in the Navalgadi. Can ask Mary Antoinette. So yeah, I think Moon is in conjuncting Uranus, um, and in conjuncting Neptune, and applying to square Pluto from Scorpio. Now again, when people say, oh, but there's technology, there's this, there's that, there are always going to be people who are going to get themselves into the teeter-tatter. They had the time to shed the misconceptions around the feminine for a decade now after the Aries-Uranus conjunction squaring Pluto, which was very much noted by the Me Too.